In part 2 of this series, we looked at thermoregulation, the cardiovascular and the respiratory system. Now we're going to move on to the head. First, I will observe the appearance. I'm looking for a round appearance and will note any dysmorphic features. I'll then measure head circumference to ascertain micro or macrocephaly. Normal head circumference would be between 31 and 38 centimetres. This infant has a head circumference of about 36 centimetres. I'll then palpate, and I'm going to palpate the anterior fontanelle, noting if it feels flat, which would be normal, or if it's sunken, bulging or abnormal. A tense bulging fontanelle may suggest raised intracranial pressure, and a sunken fontanelle may suggest dehydration. I'll palpate the vault, noting the cranial sutures if they're closely applied, widely separated or normal. Craniostyenosis is a condition in which one or more of the fibrous sutures in an infant's skull prematurely fuses, changing the growth pattern of the skull, which can result in raised intracranial pressures and damage to the intracranial structures. I will note any cranial moulding. This is common after birth and resolves in a few days. Caput succedaneum is a diffuse subcutaneous fluid collection with poorly defined margins that often crosses suture lines. This is caused by pressure on the presenting part of the head during delivery. It does not usually cause complications and resolves over the first few days. A cephalhematoma, however, is a subperiosteal hemorrhage. This occurs in 1 to 2% of infants and might increase in size after birth. The hemorrhage is bound by the periosteum, therefore the swelling does not cross suture lines, but it does increase the risk of jaundice. Next, I'll move on to examining the baby's face. I'll start by looking at the overall appearance, noting any dysmorphic features. I'll then check for facial symmetry. This can be caused by facial nerve palsy, particularly after an instrumental delivery. I'll also look for any signs of trauma, such as bruising or lacerations, which could have happened around the time of delivery. I'm going to assess the nose, and I'll assess whether nasal passages appear patent. Because newborns are obligate nasal breathers, bilateral choanal atresia can lead to respiratory distress and cyanosis when they're at rest. Finally, I'll have a look at the chin. It's normal for newborns to have a slightly receding chin, but if it's particularly pronounced, it might be associated with syndromes such as Pierre-Robin syndrome. Next, I'll move on to the eyes, and I'll start by looking at their overall position and shape, checking that there are 2 eyes present and that their size is appropriate in relation to the baby's head. I'll also make sure the corneas are clear, and I'll look for any signs of ptosis or epicanthic folds. Next, I'll check for any redness or discharge. I'll gently pull down the lower eyelid to examine the sclera and note any discoloration, such as jaundice. I'll also take a moment to look at the lashes and eyebrows. I'll then assess the fundal reflex in each eye. Using the ophthalmoscope, I'll shine the light towards the baby eye from about 6 inches away. I'm looking for a reddish-orange reflection in each pupil, which comes from light bouncing off the vascularized retina. The exact colour can vary depending on the baby's ethnicity. Any absent reflex or a white reflex known as leukochorea requires immediate referral to ophthalmology. Next, I'm going to inspect the ears. I'm going to look at the pinna, noting any asymmetry, any skin tags, any pits, or the presence of accessory auricles. I will look for a well-developed helix in line with the gestation, and the pinna should spring back when flexed. I'll also check that the outer canthus of the eye is in line with the top 1/3 of the ear or the posterior fontanelle. Low-set ears are associated with genetic conditions such as Turner's or Noonan syndrome. Next, I'll examine the baby's mouth, and I'll start by inspecting the entire palate. To do this properly, I'll use a tongue depressor and a torch, and I might ask the baby's parents to stabilise the baby's head. I want to visualise the whole palate and central uvula to check they're present and intact, and I must visually inspect, as it's highly possible to miss a cleft palate if it's only done by palpation. I'll also look at the tongue and gums, assessing for any signs of tongue tie, the presence of natal teeth, Epstein's pearls, which are small, harmless cysts commonly seen in newborns. If the tongue appears large or protruding, I'll keep in mind that this can be associated with conditions such as Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, Down syndrome, or hypothyroidism. Of course, if I don't have a pen torch, I can use the light on my ophthalmoscope.